Richard Bong's formative years unfolded in the serene expanse of Poplar, Wisconsin, a landscape where the invigorating aroma of towering pine forests intermingled with the earthy scent of vast farmlands stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Born on September 24, 1920, he was the eldest among 9 siblings in a Swedish-American household that held an unwavering reverence for diligent toil. His father, Carl, dedicated himself to cultivating the land, and young Dick, as he was affectionately known to all, spent his boyhood immersed in the quintessential activities of a farm lad, performing essential chores before the first rays of dawn, attending school, and then returning to more demanding tasks until the arrival of dusk. Nothing in his nascent life offered any premonition of a future decorated with military valor. He possessed a quiet demeanor, a methodical approach to life, the sort of child who found greater satisfaction in meticulously repairing an engine than in engaging in self-promotion or idle chatter. Yet, a profound transformation began to stir within him whenever his gaze ascended to the heavens. Airplanes were an exceedingly uncommon sight above the bucolic Wisconsin countryside during the 1930s, and whenever one materialized, Dick would invariably halt his current activity, transfixed, watching its graceful ascent until it ultimately dissolved into the distant sky. By 1938, having successfully completed his high school education, he enrolled at Superior State Teachers College. His parents harbored the expectation that he would embrace a career as an educator, a venerable profession synonymous with stability and security. However, Dick was privately cultivating alternative aspirations. He had delved into accounts of the Army Air Corps, narratives of individuals who commanded the skies rather than merely traversing the ground, who engaged in combat across 3 dimensions instead of being confined to 2. In 1941, with the devastating conflagration of war already engulfing Europe and geopolitical tensions escalating ominously with Japan, he made a pivotal decision that would irrevocably alter the trajectory of his life. He formally enlisted in the Army Air Corps Aviation Cadet program. His parents struggled to comprehend why a farm boy who had never once experienced flight would harbor such an intense desire to pilot an aircraft. Nevertheless, Dick had unequivocally discovered his true calling, even if the full extent of its meaning remained elusive to him at that moment. The infamous surprise assault on Pearl Harbor occurred on December 7, 1941, a tragic event that transpired while Bong was still deeply immersed in his rigorous training regimen. Abruptly, aviation cadets were no longer merely acquiring a specialized skill. They were undergoing an urgent preparation for the brutal realities of war. The entire instructional program underwent a dramatic acceleration. What had initially been a considered career choice swiftly transformed into an intensive survival course. Dick progressed through his foundational training stages in California, subsequently advancing to more specialized instruction in Arizona. His instructors quickly discerned a distinctive quality about him. He was conspicuously devoid of flamboyance. He neither engaged in ostentatious displays nor sought to impress others, yet his spatial awareness was extraordinarily acute, almost uncannily supernatural. He possessed the remarkable ability to simultaneously track multiple aircraft within a simulated dogfight scenario while meticulously preserving optimal energy management. One instructor, in a particularly insightful evaluation, noted, "Natural ability exceptional. Gunnery scores highest in class. Lacks aggression." That final observation would ultimately prove to be profoundly ironic. Dick's nature was not aggressive in the conventional sense of the word. He refrained from verbal sparring or actively seeking out confrontations, but he possessed an attribute far more invaluable, an extraordinary degree of patience. We invite you to stay with us and watch the conclusion of this video. We would be deeply grateful for your like and subscription. While his fellow cadets often exhibited an eager impulsiveness to plunge into every engagement, Dick meticulously analyzed angles, precisely calculated distances, and accurately assessed closure rates. He would patiently bide his time, awaiting the opportune moment for an impeccable shot, rather than squandering precious ammunition on low-percentage, speculative deflections. This unwavering discipline was a direct inheritance from his upbringing. On a farm, one does not waste bullets frivolously during a hunt. Instead, one ensures that the initial shot is decisive and effective, understanding that a second opportunity may never arise. He successfully earned his coveted wings and received his commission as a second lieutenant on January 9, 1942. At the tender age of 21, Dick Bong had officially become a fighter pilot, yet he had never experienced the crucible of actual combat. He had never discharged his aircraft's weaponry at an adversary capable of retaliating. The Army Air Corps initially assigned him to Hamilton Field in California as an instructor, a role he fulfilled for several months, imparting to other aspiring pilots the fundamental skills he had so thoroughly mastered. It was a secure and undeniably vital occupation. However, it did not align with the core motivation that had compelled him to enlist. By the middle of 1942, the Pacific Theater of Operations was experiencing an acute and desperate need for seasoned pilots. The Imperial Japanese forces were achieving significant victories, systematically pushing American military personnel back, island by embattled island. Pilots were perishing at a rate that far outstripped their replacement capabilities. Dick persistently and repeatedly submitted requests for combat duty. Finally, in September 1942, his long-awaited orders arrived. He was formally assigned to the 5th Air Force, destined for deployment in the Southwest Pacific, and he would be flying an aircraft about which he had only heard tantalizing rumors, the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The P-38 Lightning was an aerial marvel unlike any other contemporary aircraft gracing the skies. While most fighter planes were propelled by a single engine, the Lightning boasted two, strategically mounted on distinctive twin booms that extended rearward to an unmistakable twin-tail configuration. The pilot's cockpit was uniquely situated within a central nacelle, nestled precisely between these booms, affording the pilot an unparalleled, unobstructed panoramic view that single-engine fighters simply could not rival. Lockheed had initially conceptualized and designed this aircraft in 1937 as a high-altitude interceptor, and by 1942, it had unequivocally become the fastest fighter within the American military arsenal. However, this impressive velocity was accompanied by a commensurate degree of mechanical complexity. Its twin Allison V1710 engines demanded meticulous and perfect synchronization. The failure of even a single engine necessitated an immediate and precise compensatory adjustment with rudder trim. Otherwise, the resulting asymmetric thrust would inevitably propel the aircraft into a perilous spin. Furthermore, the turbo superchargers, which were instrumental in bestowing upon the Lightning its exceptional high-altitude performance, were notoriously temperamental, frequently succumbing to malfunctions that could swiftly transform a routine combat mission into a dire emergency landing scenario When Bong first entered the cockpit of a P-38 at Hamilton Field, he found the space remarkably ample, especially when contrasted with the confines of single-engine trainers. The control yoke, rather than a traditional stick, was positioned between his legs, lending the experience a sensation more akin to piloting a bomber than a nimble fighter. 4. 50 caliber machine guns and a single 20 mm cannon were tightly clustered in the aircraft's nose, all designed to fire directly forward through the propeller arc, without the need for synchronization gear. This ingenious arrangement translated into a devastating concentration of firepower, delivered in a tight, focused pattern. In stark contrast to other fighters, which typically mounted their guns in the wings, resulting in a dispersed shot pattern, the P-38's nose-mounted weaponry converged precisely at a single, lethal point. Striking an adversary within this convergent zone guaranteed a catastrophic and immediate disintegration. However, the Lightning carried a certain reputation, and not all of it was favorable. Pilots frequently characterized it as being heavy and claimed it lacked the maneuverability to effectively engage with German Bf-109s or Japanese Zeros. The control surfaces tended to stiffen considerably at high speeds, rendering aggressive pullouts from steep dives exceptionally hazardous. In the European theater, P-38s were encountering significant challenges when pitted against Luftwaffe fighters that could outturn and outclimb them at medium altitudes. Consequently, some frustrated pilots actively sought transfers to alternative aircraft, such as the P-51 Mustangs or P-47 Thunderbolts. The Lightning, they asserted with grim conviction, was nothing short of a widowmaker. Dick attentively absorbed all these widespread complaints during his checkout training, yet he perceived the aircraft through a different lens. Indeed, the P-38 was undeniably heavy, fully loaded. It tipped the scales at over 17,500 pounds. However, this very weight conferred distinct advantages. The aircraft possessed inherent stability, making it an exceptionally steady gun platform that remained remarkably unperturbed by atmospheric turbulence. Moreover, the presence of twin engines provided a crucial layer of redundancy. The loss of one engine still offered a viable chance of returning safely to base. And as for its firepower, no other aircraft in the Pacific theater could unleash such a concentrated torrent of destruction in a single, devastating burst. I am from a small town in the Midwest, and I find the video topic incredibly compelling. The transformation of a quiet farm boy into a legendary fighter pilot, especially with his unique approach to flying and combat, is truly inspiring. It highlights how different skill sets, even those developed in seemingly unrelated environments like a farm, can be invaluable in unexpected ways. The initial moments of aerial combat were often a crucible, and for Dick, it began with an intense focus on mastering his formidable aircraft, the Lightning. He dedicated numerous weeks to understanding the unique characteristics of this twin-boomed fighter. Taking off demanded a delicate touch. An overly aggressive application of the throttle would inevitably lead to a dangerous swing off the runway due to the immense torque. In the heat of battle, one could not simply yank the control stick as might be permissible in a less powerful training aircraft. The P-38 necessitated smooth, meticulously coordinated inputs. But once a pilot truly grasped its inherent rhythm, the machine responded with remarkable grace and precision. Dick relentlessly honed his gunnery skills, ensuring his convergent zone was precisely calibrated at 300 yards. This distance was optimally chosen, close enough to inflict devastating damage upon an adversary, yet sufficiently far to minimize the risk of being struck by debris from an exploding target. He thoroughly analyzed the Lightning's energy retention capabilities, recognizing its unparalleled speed in a dive. This incredible velocity, he understood, could be expertly converted into crucial altitude, superior positioning, and ultimately the decisive advantage that often determined the victor in a dogfight. In late September 1942, the Army dispatched him to San Francisco, where he embarked upon a transport vessel destined for the distant shores of Australia. The journey across the vast Pacific spanned several weeks, characterized by a constant zigzagging course designed to evade the menacing threat of Japanese submarines. During this protracted voyage, Dick diligently utilized his time, committing P-38 emergency procedures to memory and vividly visualizing various combat scenarios, mentally steeling himself for the impending challenges. He had absorbed numerous accounts from pilots returning from the Pacific Theater, stories that painted a starkly different picture from the bumbling, myopic enemy depicted in wartime propaganda. These Japanese pilots, he learned, were highly experienced, aggressively tenacious, and their nimble Zero fighters possessed a turning radius that could outmaneuver any American aircraft. The only discernible advantages available to American pilots were their superior firepower, formidable dive speed, and cohesive teamwork. Dick knew, with an unwavering certainty, that he would require every single one of these attributes to survive and succeed. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Upon his arrival in Brisbane, Australia in early November 1942, he received orders assigning him to the 9th Fighter Squadron, a component of the 49th Fighter Group within the 5th Air Force. This unit was strategically based in Port Moresby, New Guinea, a veritable malarial hellhole hewn out of dense jungle along the southern coastline. The Japanese forces maintained a firm grip on the northern coast, with the formidable Owen Stanley Mountains serving as a natural barrier separating the two opposing armies. Daily, Japanese bombers launched relentless assaults on Allied positions, invariably escorted by their agile Zero fighters. And every day, American fighters scrambled skyward to intercept them. This desolate, unforgiving landscape was to become Dick Bong's new operational base, and his intensive education in the brutal realities of aerial combat was about to commence in the most arduous classroom imaginable on Earth. Port Moresby, in the unforgiving month of November 1942, was a suffocating inferno intensified by oppressive humidity. The airfield itself was a rudimentary strip of pierced steel planking hastily laid over an expanse of perpetually sodden mud that seemed destined never to dry. Mosquitoes, in clouds so dense they could be inhaled, swarmed relentlessly. Pilots endured their existence within canvas tents, which baked mercilessly under the tropical sun during the day and offered no respite from the torrential rain that, with unerring punctuality, descended every afternoon. Dysentery, malaria, and dengue fever proved to be more potent adversaries than Japanese bullets, hospitalizing a greater number of men. The 49th Fighter Group, having been embroiled in continuous combat since April, bore the indelible marks of its prolonged engagement. Mechanics toiled tirelessly on battle-damaged P-38s, improvising repairs with whatever scavenged parts they could procure. The pilots, their faces etched with the strains of war, appeared a decade older than their official service records indicated. Dick presented himself to Major Paul Wurtsmith, the group commander, who, after a single glance at the fresh-faced youth from Wisconsin, promptly assigned him to fly as a wingman for more seasoned pilots. The harsh reality of New Guinea dictated that no one survived long by attempting to be a hero on their inaugural mission. Dick's very first combat sortie unfolded on December 27, 1942. Intelligence reports had indicated that Japanese bombers, originating from Rabaul, were en route to target Allied shipping within the harbor. The 9th Fighter Squadron launched a formation of 16 P-38s, climbing aggressively to confront the impending threat. Dick, fulfilling his role as a wingman, understood his task implicitly: maintain strict adherence to his flight leader, vigilantly guard his leader's tail, and above all, avoid any foolish maneuvers. At an altitude of 18,000 feet, he spotted them, a distinct formation of twin-engine bombers, most likely Mitsubishi G4Ms, colloquially known by Americans as Bettys, with their protective Zero escorts weaving gracefully above them. His hands instinctively tightened around the yoke. Every primal instinct screamed at him to close in and open fire, yet rigorous discipline held him in check. His flight leader skillfully positioned their section for an attack run, initiating a dive from the sun's glare to complicate any defensive reactions from the Zeros. Then, with startling suddenness, everything coalesced into a furious, chaotic blur. The leader unleashed a volley of fire upon a Betty, his tracers methodically walking into the bomber's wing root. Dick, in swift succession, followed suit, aligning his gun sight Pipper onto another bomber. He depressed the trigger. The P-38 shuddered violently as its 4 50-caliber machine guns and single cannon discharged simultaneously. His initial combat burst, perhaps, lasted no more than 2 seconds. He observed definite strikes on the Betty's fuselage, but the maelstrom of the moment prevented him from discerning the extent of the damage before a Zero streaked past his canopy, so close that he could distinctly make out the pilot's helmet. The radio erupted into a cacophony of voices. "Break right! 2 Zeros high! Watch your 6!" Dick pulled back hard on the stick, feeling the immense G-forces compress his chest, and in the ensuing pandemonium, he lost sight of his leader. This was unequivocally not training. In training, every participant adhered to a predetermined script. Here, that script was incinerated the instant contact was made. He suddenly found himself utterly alone at 15,000 feet, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The radio discipline he had painstakingly learned evaporated amidst the frantic calls from pilots shouting out threats, their positions, and desperate pleas for assistance. Dick abruptly reversed course, frantically scanning the skies for his squadron. And then he saw it, a P-38 trailing a plume of smoke, with 2 Zeros relentlessly clinging to its tail. The struggling fighter was absorbing repeated hits, fragments tearing away from its left boom. Without a moment's hesitation, Dick plunged into a dive. The airspeed indicator needle wound swiftly upward, 320, 340, 360 miles per hour. The powerful P-38 yearned to accelerate further, but the controls were becoming increasingly heavy and unresponsive. He meticulously lined up on the trailing Zero, still approximately 600 yards distant, far too great a range for effective fire. But he fired nonetheless. Long, incandescent streams of tracers arced toward the enemy fighter. The Zero's pilot, spotting the approaching threat, immediately broke off his attack and climbed rapidly away. Dick, exercising crucial restraint, did not pursue. Chasing Zeros into their climbing turns, he knew, was nothing short of suicidal. The damaged P-38, a testament to resilience, limped laboriously toward home. Dick never discovered the identity of the pilot flying that crippled aircraft. The squadron eventually landed back at Port Moresby, with 13 of the original 16 aircraft accounted for. 3 pilots had not returned. One was definitively confirmed killed when his P-38 disintegrated after a brutal Zero attack. The other 2 remained missing. Perhaps they had crashed into the dense, unforgiving jungle. Perhaps they had managed to reach the relative safety of the water and would be recovered by rescue boats. More likely, however, they would not. After the debriefing, Dick retreated to his cot and meticulously replayed every single second of the intense engagement. He had fired at 2 targets and had failed to hit either effectively. His formation discipline, so diligently practiced, had completely disintegrated the moment chaos erupted. He had broken off an attack instead of pressing it home. By his own exacting standards, he had unequivocally failed. Yet, he was alive, and the P-38 had performed precisely as its reputation promised. It had dived faster than the Zeros could possibly follow, and its concentrated firepower, even in an ineffective burst, had been sufficient to deter an enemy already committed to securing a kill. In those mere 20 minutes of harrowing combat, he had assimilated more crucial knowledge than in months of rigorous training. After completing his initial period of intensive training, the young aviator Dick embarked upon an arduous 6-week stretch, during which he participated in an additional 23 operational sorties. A significant portion of these missions comprised routine bomber escorts or uneventful patrol flights, where the vast expanse of the sky remained devoid of enemy contact. However, a select few escalated into intense, protracted aerial skirmishes, unfolding dramatically over the strategic waterways of the Bismarck Sea or amidst the scattered jewels of the Solomon Islands. Throughout these early engagements, Dick discharged his aircraft's weaponry on 14 separate occasions, confidently asserting hits on 3 distinct enemy aircraft. Yet, despite his conviction, none of these claims received official confirmation as destroyed. The group's intelligence officer meticulously outlined the stringent criteria for such validations. Irrefutable gun camera footage explicitly depicting the target's fiery disintegration or the unequivocal corroboration from an independent witness aboard another friendly aircraft. The mere status of damaged was deemed insufficient, and the speculative assessment of probably destroyed similarly failed to meet the rigorous evidentiary thresholds. A profound turning point in Dick's burgeoning combat career arrived with stark clarity on January 8, 1943. He was then engaged in a reconnaissance and attack sweep mission high above Leh, a heavily fortified Japanese bastion situated along the rugged northern coastline of New Guinea. During this sortie, his flight unexpectedly encountered a formidable formation of Japanese Zero fighters, acting as protective escorts for a contingent of Val dive bombers, returning from a recent strike. The enemy aircraft were operating at a relatively low altitude, estimated around 8,000 feet, which fortuitously granted the P-38s a critical altitude advantage. Seizing this tactical opportunity, Dick's flight leader issued the decisive command to bounce, initiating a rapid, aggressive descent. In that moment, Dick's mind was no longer occupied with the rote procedures or the theoretical tenets his instructors had painstakingly imparted. 6 weeks immersed in the brutal crucible of aerial combat had fundamentally rewired his cerebral processing, enabling him to interpret and react to dynamic information with an almost preternatural speed, bypassing the slower mechanisms of conscious deliberation. His gaze locked onto a solitary zero, positioned vulnerably at the periphery of the enemy formation, an aircraft that had not yet perceived the impending threat of the diving P-38s. Instantly, and without conscious effort, his mind computed the precise deflection angle required for a successful shot. His hands, acting with fluid, almost organic coordination, manipulated the controls. Subtle rudder inputs to align his trajectory, delicate stick pressure to maintain tracking, and precise throttle adjustments to meticulously manage his closure rate. He unleashed a torrent of fire at a range of 400 yards, skillfully walking his glowing tracer rounds directly into the target. The Zero's right-wing root erupted violently in a spectacular shower of shrapnel and debris. The stricken fighter immediately snapped into an uncontrollable spin, plummeting earthward, leaving a vivid contrail of smoke and incandescent flame. Dick, ever focused on the unfolding engagement, did not pause to witness its final fiery impact. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please also consider leaving a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. In the immediate aftermath of his first confirmed kill, another Zero, executing a desperate hard left turn, attempted to create separation from the P-38s. However, the inherent superior speed and momentum of Dick's Lightning fighter propelled him inexorably through the heart of the Japanese formation before the startled enemy pilots could effectively react. Swiftly, he executed an aggressive pull-up, expertly converting his raw airspeed into valuable altitude before arcing around to position himself for a subsequent attack pass. This time, his keen eyes identified a Val dive bomber, frantically endeavoring to escape at an perilously low, wave-top level. The bomber's rear gunner valiantly opened fire, sending streams of luminous tracers arcing upwards towards Dick's canopy. But the considerable range, coupled with the relatively sparse defensive fire, rendered the effort largely ineffective. Dick meticulously closed the distance to 250 yards, then delivered a precise, devastating 3-second burst of fire. The Val's left engine instantly detonated with a concussive force. The crippled bomber pitched violently nose down, plunging towards the ocean surface, impacting the water at an astonishing speed of 200 miles per hour. This single electrifying mission yielded 2 indisputably confirmed kills. Upon his return to the bustling airbase at Port Moresby, the irrefutable evidence provided by his gun camera footage conclusively substantiated his claims, earning him a personal commendation and congratulatory handshake from the esteemed group commander. Yet remarkably, Dick exhibited no outward signs of celebration. Instead, his analytical mind was already meticulously dissecting the entire engagement, replaying it frame by excruciating frame in his internal mental theater. Through this rigorous self-assessment, he identified what he perceived as critical errors. He concluded that he had initiated fire too prematurely on the Zero, an act that resulted in an unnecessary expenditure of precious ammunition. Furthermore, he recognized that he had lingered within the Val dive bomber's dangerous defensive kill zone for an uncomfortably extended period, nearly 2 seconds, thereby affording the rear gunner multiple, potentially lethal opportunities to score a hit. His candid internal assessment led him to conclude that sheer luck had played as significant a role in his survival and success as his burgeoning skill. The imperative, he determined, was to achieve an even higher degree of mastery. Just 3 days subsequent to this pivotal mission, fate presented him with another opportunity to refine his deadly craft. A patrol mission traversing the expansive Huon Gulf unexpectedly devolved into a chaotic, swirling dogfight when a formidable contingent of 16 Zeros ambushed the P-38 formation. With consummate tactical acumen, Dick leveraged the Lightning's inherent superior dive speed to surgically isolate a single Zero from the protective embrace of its wingman. Then, demonstrating an exceptional understanding of energy management, he capitalized on his aircraft's remarkable energy retention capabilities to rapidly regain altitude before the disoriented enemy pilot could react effectively. He skillfully maneuvered to intercept the now isolated Zero while it was caught in a climbing turn, a notoriously vulnerable position for any fighter aircraft. From a precise range of 300 yards positioned directly astern, he unleashed a devastating volley. The Japanese fighter disintegrated in a spectacular explosion of metal and flame. This marked his third confirmed kill. A mere week later, on January 24th, he further augmented his tally by shooting down 2 additional Zeros in a singular, intense engagement over Buna. Within an astonishing span of just 13 days, Dick had achieved 5 confirmed aerial victories. Dick Bong had officially attained the coveted status of an ace, and it was becoming abundantly clear that this was merely the prelude to an even more remarkable combat saga. What truly distinguished Dick from his contemporaries, even those considered highly competent pilots, was his extraordinarily methodical and precise approach to aerial gunnery. While many pilots of the era adhered to a more indiscriminate spray and pray methodology, holding down the trigger in a desperate hope that some rounds would connect, Dick adopted a philosophy of short, meticulously aimed bursts. He had assiduously calculated that his aircraft's formidable armament carried sufficient ammunition for approximately 15 seconds of continuous, sustained fire. While 15 seconds might superficially sound like an ample supply, its true scarcity becomes acutely apparent in the frenetic chaos of an aerial engagement, where potential targets materialize and vanish in mere fractions of a second. Dick's average burst duration was a remarkably economical 1.3 seconds, a disciplined approach that afforded him the opportunity to execute 12 distinct individual firing opportunities before completely exhausting his ammunition supply. Each and every one of these shots was painstakingly aimed, discharged only when the geometric alignment between his aircraft and the target was optimally established. His kill-to-ammunition ratio stood as a testament to his unparalleled efficiency, proving truly extraordinary. In stark contrast to many other pilots who might expend upwards of 1,000 rounds for the achievement of a single confirmed kill, Dick's average expenditure was a mere 400 rounds per victory. Beyond his economical trigger discipline, he had also achieved a profound mastery of deflection shooting, often regarded as the most challenging art in aerial combat. This intricate skill involved accurately hitting a target that was moving perpendicularly or at a significant angle to one's own flight path. The majority of pilots struggled immensely with the concept of properly leading a target. Their instinct was to aim directly at the enemy's current position, rather than anticipating and aiming at the point where the target would be when their projectiles eventually arrived. Dick's formative years spent hunting ducks in the marshlands of Wisconsin had provided him with an invaluable foundation, as the fundamental principle of leading a bird with a shotgun was, he realized, identical. He had further refined this critical skill through a unique, self-devised training regimen. During routine training flights, he would diligently practice tracking P-38s from his own squadron, maintaining his gun sight's aiming reticle precisely ahead of them in simulated deflection shots. While his squadron mates initially perceived his meticulous practice as somewhat peculiar or eccentric, the rigorous training unequivocally yielded immense dividends. In the high-stakes crucible of actual combat, his brain instinctively calculated the complex lead angles with effortless precision. By the advent of February 1943, Dick's confirmed aerial victories had reached a total of 7, earning him the profound respect and admiration of every single pilot within the distinguished 49th Fighter Group. However, through his intense immersion in combat, he had also unearthed a more unsettling truth. The experience of battle possessed an insidiously addictive quality. The heightened state of hyper-awareness, the surreal sensation of time dilating and slowing down during an engagement, and the primal savage satisfaction derived from executing a flawless shot. These were sensations that nothing in the mundane realm of civilian life could ever replicate or equal in their sheer intensity. While some pilots invariably succumbed to burnout after only a few months, their nerves irrevocably frayed by the relentless, crushing stress of constant danger. Dick appeared remarkably immune to such psychological attrition. He prosecuted mission after mission with the same unwavering methodical focus and unflappable determination he had once applied to the demanding routines of farm work. When his fellow pilots voiced their grievances about the oppressive heat, the debilitating effects of malaria, or the unappetizing quality of the rations, Dick's sole concern remained a practical inquiry. When was the next mission briefing scheduled? He had unequivocally discovered his innate aptitude, and his unwavering intention was to ascend to the absolute pinnacle of his newfound calling. With the attainment of ace status came a suite of privileges that Dick neither sought nor particularly desired, coupled with a set of responsibilities that he embraced with utmost seriousness. The national press, ever hungry for heroic narratives, discovered him in March 1943, when the headquarters of the 5th Air Force actively sought to present inspiring figures to bolster morale among the populace back home. Consequently, a contingent of photographers descended upon Port Moresby, eager to capture images of the unassuming, quiet farm boy who had, against all odds, transformed into a formidable aerial predator. Dick found every single moment of this unwelcome attention utterly detestable. He would reluctantly pose beside his P-38, arms defensively crossed, his expression clearly betraying his profound discomfort, while reporters peppered him with what he considered stupid questions about the emotional experience of shooting down a Zero. How did it truly feel, they would inquire. To him, it felt like the disciplined execution of his assigned duty. It felt like safeguarding the lives of his squadron mates. It felt like an ineffable experience, utterly beyond the comprehension of anyone who had never been confined within a cockpit at 20,000 feet. with hostile enemy fighters converging at a combined velocity of 600 miles per hour. The relentless pace of aerial combat garnered substantial attention, yet this notoriety brought with it a fortunate consequence. General George Kenney, the esteemed commander of the 5th Air Force, personally interceded to ensure Dick remained within the theater of operations, rather than being rotated back to the continental United States. While most pilots concluded their combat tours and returned home for recuperation and instructional assignments, Kenney recognized the imperative of retaining his most proficient aviators to impart invaluable survival techniques to new recruits. Consequently, Dick was entrusted with supplementary responsibilities as a gunnery instructor. Between his demanding combat sorties, he would ascend with fledgling pilots, meticulously demonstrating the strategies that had preserved his own life. His tenets were clear: never pursue Japanese Zero fighters in an upward climb. Leverage the P-38's superior dive speed to dictate the terms of engagement. Employ precise, economical bursts of fire, and always maintain acute awareness of one's wingman's position. While some of the fresh replacements diligently absorbed his wisdom, others, regrettably, harbored a misguided sense of their own invincibility. Dick's concern for their receptiveness waned after he bore witness to 3 hotshots being shot down within their inaugural week, a direct consequence of their hubris and their blatant disregard for his life-saving instruction. His 9th confirmed aerial victory transpired on March 3, 1943, during a mission that, by all accounts, should have culminated in his demise. He was diligently providing top cover for a formation of B-17 bombers engaged in a perilous assault on Rabaul, when a flight of 6 Zeros ambushed his section from a position of superior altitude. In a moment of critical stress, Dick's wingman succumbed to panic, abruptly abandoning formation and leaving Dick isolated against an overwhelming numerical advantage of enemy fighters. The tactical panorama was unequivocally bleak. A solitary P-38 against 6 adversaries compounded by an altitude disadvantage and a complete absence of support. Yet Dick had internalized a fundamental truth of aerial combat, that the paralyzing grip of panic proved far more lethal than any enemy bullet. He maintained an unwavering composure, expertly utilizing the P-38's exceptional roll rate to negate the initial Zero's firing solution, then executed a swift, controlled dive to re-establish a tactical separation. The Zeros, in a critical error of judgment, pursued him downwards, unaware that in a dive, no enemy aircraft could possibly match the sheer velocity of a Lockheed Lightning. Dick executed a masterful recovery, pulling out of his dive at 5,000 feet with an abundance of speed that he skillfully converted into a rapid, sustained zoom climb back to an altitude of 12,000 feet. The pursuing Zeros, still committed to their downward trajectory, were caught at a disadvantage when Dick abruptly reversed course, engaging one of them during a climbing turn. He unleashed a devastating 2-second burst of concentrated fire that precisely tore the Zero's tail section clean off. The remaining 50 Zeros, likely low on vital fuel reserves after their prolonged pursuit, promptly disengaged from the attack. Dick, his P-38 miraculously undamaged, returned to base alone and subsequently filed a report concerning his wingman's conduct, which ultimately resulted in the pilot being grounded for a week. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please feel free to share your place of origin and thoughts on the video's subject matter in the comments below. By the advent of April, his tally had escalated to 12 kills, cementing a formidable reputation that resonated throughout the theater. Other pilots, recognizing his exceptional prowess, began to meticulously study his innovative tactics. His gun camera footage, a raw and unvarnished chronicle of his engagements, was integrated into official training films, providing invaluable lessons for aspiring aces. The dedicated mechanics assigned to his P-38 took immense pride in their work, ensuring the aircraft remained in immaculate condition. They affectionately christened it Marge, a tribute to Dick's girlfriend back in Wisconsin. This name, alongside 12 meticulously painted Japanese flags symbolizing his aerial victories, adorned the plane's nose. While Dick personally found the gesture somewhat whimsical, he wisely offered no objection, understanding that morale was a critical component of the war effort. And if his ground crew derived inspiration from a mascot, his plane could readily serve that purpose. What truly distinguished Dick from merely competent pilots was his profound and intuitive comprehension of energy management in the unforgiving arena of aerial combat. Every aircraft engaged in a dogfight possesses a finite quantum of energy, a dynamic interplay between its current speed and altitude. To squander this energy was to render oneself utterly vulnerable. To diligently maintain it was to assert absolute control over the unfolding engagement. The P-38, unlike the agile Japanese Zero, was not inherently designed as a close-quarters turn fighter, a fact Dick acutely understood. Thus, he never attempted to engage them in protracted turning contests. Instead, he masterfully employed hit-and-run tactics, a strategy famously pioneered by Chennault's Flying Tigers in the skies over China. This involved diving in at blistering speeds, unleashing a precise burst of fire, then rapidly extending away before the bewildered enemy could effectively react, utilizing the P-38's superior speed to rapidly climb back to a position of advantageous altitude. This sequence was repeated with devastating efficacy. The Japanese, recognizing the distinctive twin-boom silhouette of the Lightning, bestowed upon its pilots the chilling moniker of fork-tailed devils, and even their most seasoned aces learned to prudently avoid engagement with them whenever feasible. Dick also pioneered a revolutionary approach he termed probability shooting. In stark contrast to most pilots who painstakingly sought the elusive perfect shot, patiently waiting until they were positioned in an ostensibly ideal firing solution, Dick sagely recognized that within the chaotic dynamism of a dogfight, such pristine opportunities rarely materialized. Instead, he deliberately opted for 70% shots, not flawless perhaps, but sufficiently effective given the P-38's concentrated firepower to inflict critical damage upon enemy aircraft. While his individual shot accuracy was not demonstrably superior to that of his peers, his disciplined strategy meant he unleashed approximately 3 times as many rounds per engagement, precisely because he eschewed the futile pursuit of perfection. The mathematical consequence was undeniable. A greater volume of shots directly translated to a higher probability of hits. More hits, in turn, inevitably led to a greater number of kills. By June of 1943, his confirmed victories had climbed to 18, firmly establishing him as the preeminent American ace in the sprawling Pacific theater. Yet, it was not the sheer numerical tally that singularly motivated him. Rather, it was the intellectual challenge, the intricate geometric problem of precisely delivering bullets into a rapidly moving target before that same target could eliminate him or his wingman. Every aerial engagement presented a unique set of variables. Each enemy pilot possessed their own distinctive patterns, their individual repertoire of evasive maneuvers. Dick meticulously studied them all, diligently cataloging lessons learned for the subsequent encounter. Some Zeros, for instance, would consistently break left under attack. Others would attempt a sudden, split S maneuver. The truly skilled adversaries would execute a scissor, deliberately attempting to force an overshoot. Dick honed his ability to anticipate these defensive responses, positioning himself with such foresight that any evasive action undertaken by the enemy inadvertently played directly into the setup for his next devastating attack. The summer of 1943 ushered in a pivotal new phase in the Pacific War. The Allied forces embarked upon a relentless northward advance through the rugged Solomon Islands chain, and each strategic progression was utterly contingent upon securing absolute air superiority. Dick found himself flying multiple missions daily, frequently launching his P-38 before the first hint of dawn, and not returning to base until well after darkness had fallen. The operational tempo was profoundly brutal. Pilots, utterly exhausted, were observed falling asleep during critical briefings. Maintenance crews toiled through grueling 18-hour shifts, heroically striving to maintain the P-38s in airworthy condition. The Japanese, now facing existential threats, were fighting with a desperate ferocity, throwing every available resource against the American forces endeavoring to isolate the crucial stronghold of Rabaul. Dick's kill count continued its relentless ascent, reaching 19 in July, 21 by August, and an impressive 24 by September. Each numerical increment represented a specific, indelible engagement seared into his memory, the audacious Zero that attempted to ram him over Wewak, the formidable twin-engine bomber that exploded with such proximity to his P-38 that its shrapnel cracked his canopy, the intense dogfight over Oro Bay, where he achieved the astonishing feat of downing 3 enemy aircraft within a mere 4 minutes. Other prominent aces were also accumulating their own impressive tallies. Tommy Lynch had achieved 20 victories, Gerald Johnson stood at 18, and Neil Kirby was rapidly climbing with 15. The press, ever eager for a compelling narrative, began to frame these escalating numbers as a race, a portrayal Dick profoundly despised. To him, this was not a competition. It was an unrelenting, existential struggle for survival. However, the Army Air Force, recognizing the immense public relations value, enthusiastically embraced the publicity, and headquarters meticulously maintained detailed scoreboards. Dick, consistently leading the tally, became an invaluable asset for bolstering morale, both among the troops and on the home front. In September 1943, he received orders to return to the States for a mandatory war bond tour. He had endured nearly a year in continuous combat, having flown well over 200 missions. While such a break might ordinarily be welcomed, Dick experienced a profound sense of guilt, feeling as though he were abandoning his squadron. General Kenny, understanding his apprehension, personally assured him that the tour would be brief, lasting only 2 months, after which he would return to the fight in New Guinea. America in late 1943 bore scant resemblance to the nation he had departed. The monumental demands of war production had utterly transformed the national economy. Women, A vital and burgeoning workforce now labored in factories, diligently constructing the very aircraft Dick flew. Rationing touched virtually every household, and the populace at large eagerly sought opportunities to meet a genuine war hero. Dick embarked on an arduous journey, traveling to 23 cities, delivering speeches he had painstakingly memorized due to his innate aversion to public speaking. He visited Lockheed's sprawling plant in Burbank, California, where dedicated workers constructing P-38s reverently requested his autograph on fuselage panels before they were permanently riveted into place. He eventually returned home to Wisconsin, where his parents struggled to recognize the gaunt, malaria-haunted young man who had replaced their robust farm boy son. He spent precious time with Marge Vattendahl, his beloved girlfriend, and in a moment of profound hope amidst the global conflict, asked her to marry him when the war finally concluded. Her affirmative response, he later reflected, was the singular redeeming aspect of the entire demanding tour. In December of 1943, a seasoned pilot known as Dick made his return to the tumultuous Southwest Pacific Theater, now integrated into the 49th Fighter Group's Operations Division in the capacity of a tactical advisor. His official duties encompassed the meticulous planning of aerial missions and the rigorous training of nascent aviators. Yet beneath this formal designation lay an unstated, driving imperative to persistently engage and eliminate Japanese aircraft from the skies. During his brief absence, the formidable P-38 Lightning had undergone significant enhancements. The latest iteration, the J model, boasted upgraded engines and superior characteristics for high-speed dives, features that promised even greater lethality. Dick dedicated a week to meticulously requalifying himself with these advancements, subsequently plunging back into the maelstrom of combat with his characteristic, unwavering intensity and precise methodology. The new year of 1944 quickly brought a resurgence of his aerial prowess. On January 7th, he skillfully dispatched his 25th Zero fighter over the strategic Wattam Island. A mere fortnight later, his tally impressively grew to 26 and 27 during a single, demanding mission, where he provided vital escort to a formation of B-24 bombers en route to the heavily fortified Rabaul. However, the Japanese forces were themselves undergoing a period of adaptation. Their contemporary pilots were no longer the battle-hardened veterans who had dominated the skies in 1942. Most of those experienced airmen had, tragically, perished in earlier engagements. The new recruits, though often aggressive and eager to confront the enemy, suffered from inadequate training, frequently resorting to desperate, kamikaze-style assaults that occasionally succeeded purely through their audacious, almost suicidal recklessness, posing a new and unpredictable threat. February proved to be a particularly perilous month, presenting Dick with two harrowing brushes with disaster. The first occurred when a severely damaged Zero, its pilot seemingly driven by a desperate, final impulse, attempted a suicidal ramming maneuver, narrowly missing Dick's aircraft by less than 10 feet. The second incident unfolded during a mission over Wewak, where his P-38's port engine sustained critical hits from ground fire, leading to a precipitous drop in oil pressure. With remarkable skill and a profound understanding of his aircraft's mechanics, he meticulously nursed the crippled Lightning back to base on a single engine. An arduous 3-hour flight that demanded every ounce of his expertise. The aircraft barely made it, and the maintenance chief later confirmed that the engine would have inevitably seized within another 15 minutes. underscoring the narrowness of his escape. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. March ushered in further triumphs, with victory number 30 secured during a fierce engagement over Taji, followed by his 31st and 32nd kills within the span of a single week. During this period, Dick began flying alongside a new wingman, Thomas J. Lynch. Himself an accomplished ace with 20 confirmed kills to his name. Their partnership blossomed, founded on a bedrock of mutual respect and a synergy of complementary combat styles. Lynch, characterized by his aggressive tenacity, was prone to pressing attacks that Dick, ever the cautious strategist, might have deemed too risky to continue. Conversely, Dick meticulously calculated angles and maneuvers, creating a stable platform, while Lynch expertly sowed disarray among enemy formations. Together, their combined efforts proved devastatingly effective. On April 3, 1944, their formidable duo intercepted a sizable formation of Japanese aircraft poised to attack Allied shipping. In a masterclass of aerial combat, Dick personally accounted for 3 enemy planes, while Lynch skillfully downed 2. This remarkable feat of 5 victories in a single mission established an unprecedented squadron record, cementing their legendary status. By mid-April, Dick's confirmed kill count had climbed to an astonishing 36, but the relentless strain of continuous combat had left him utterly exhausted in ways that conventional sleep could no longer ameliorate. For over 18 months, he had been embroiled in an almost unbroken cycle of aerial warfare, with only a fleeting return to the United States offering a brief respite. The physical toll was evident. His hands occasionally trembled even when he was not at the controls, and his already lean physique had shed 30 pounds. The flight surgeon, observing these clear signs of severe combat fatigue, strongly advocated for his grounding. Yet Dick steadfastly refused. He recognized that he was on the precipice of an unparalleled achievement, one that no American pilot had ever attained. The revered top American ace of World War I, Eddie Rickenbacker, had concluded his service with 26 kills, a mark Dick had surpassed months prior. Now he fixated on the seemingly impossible target of 40 victories, a monumental number that, against all odds, was suddenly within his grasp. April 12, 1944, dawned like countless other mornings in New Guinea, characterized by the oppressive, humid heat, the incessant hum of mosquitoes, and an early mission briefing scheduled for 05:30 hours. Intelligence reports indicated the presence of Japanese fighters operating in the vicinity of Hollandia, and the 49th Fighter Group was tasked with the critical objective of clearing the airspace before the arrival of Allied bombers. During the briefing, Dick meticulously scrutinized the maps, absorbing every detail of the terrain, anticipating likely enemy approach vectors, and identifying potential emergency landing fields, should unforeseen complications arise. He possessed an intimate familiarity with this particular operational area, having flown over it dozens of times, knowing every intricate mountain ridge and coastal inlet. His P-38 had undergone its customary pre-flight inspection and was fully fueled. The aircraft's guns had been precisely bore-sighted the preceding night. Everything proceeded with a practiced, almost monotonous routine. Save for one crucial detail, Dick currently held 36 confirmed kills and needed just 4 more to reach the monumental milestone of 40. The mission commenced promptly at 07 Sauerland hours, with a formation of 12 P-38 Lightnings ascending into a sky partially obscured by broken cloud cover. Dick led the formation, his gaze sweeping the heavens with that practiced, almost instinctual rhythm that had served as his guardian through hundreds of perilous combat hours. At an altitude of 14,000 feet, they pierced through the stratospheric clouds into clear, boundless air. And there they were, a distinct formation of Japanese fighters and bombers, resolutely heading south towards Allied positions. Dick quickly counted at least 20 enemy aircraft, a massive strike package indicative of the Japanese committing significant strategic resources to this engagement. He immediately broadcast the contact to his flight and skillfully maneuvered his formation to launch an attack from the sun, the oldest and still most inherently effective stratagem in the annals of aerial combat. The initial engagement, or bounce, was executed with textbook precision. Dick swiftly identified a zero positioned on the very edge of the enemy formation and initiated a steep, aggressive dive, his airspeed rapidly accelerating past 400 miles per hour. The Lightning's controls, though stiffened by the immense air pressure, responded faithfully to his expert inputs. He unleashed a torrent of fire at a range of 350 yards, his tracers converging relentlessly on the Zero's fuselage. The enemy fighter instinctively rolled left, attempting a desperate split-S maneuver to escape, but Dick had anticipated this evasive action. He made a swift, precise adjustment to his aim and fired once more. The Zero's canopy instantly shattered, and the aircraft spiraled out of control, leaving a thick plume of smoke in its wake. This confirmed his 37th kill. Dick executed a hard pull-up, the crushing G-forces momentarily pressing him deep into his seat. And with astonishing speed, he immediately acquired another target, a twin-engine bomber desperately attempting to escape towards the distant coast. He swiftly closed the distance to 300 yards and unleashed a concentrated 3-second burst of fire into the bomber's right engine. The engine erupted in a spectacular shower of debris and flames. The bomber abruptly nosed over, plummeting uncontrollably towards the dense jungle canopy below. This marked his 38th kill. The engagement swiftly devolved into a chaotic, swirling melee as both sides became inextricably intertwined in a frenetic dogfight. Dick's wingman urgently called out the presence of Zeros at a higher altitude, prompting Dick to execute a sharp, decisive reversal to confront them. 2 Japanese fighters were observed diving menacingly on a P-38 that was already trailing ominous smoke. Dick, with impeccable timing, cut them off, unleashing a perfectly aimed deflection shot at the lead Zero. His stream of bullets walked precisely across the fighter's wing route, and the Zero snapped into an uncontrollable spin. This was his 39th kill. Dick had no luxury of time to observe his latest victim fall. The second Zero, demonstrating a remarkable degree of skill and tactical awareness, had rapidly reversed its course and was now climbing aggressively towards him, its pilot clearly recognizing Dick as the paramount threat in the skirmish. They met in an almost head-on pass, their combined closing speed exceeding an incredible 600 miles per hour. Dick fired first, a split second before the Zero. Tracers from the enemy fighter flashed perilously past Dick's canopy. He felt distinct impacts on his left wing but maintained his unwavering stream of fire. The Zero's engine erupted in a catastrophic burst of flames, and the aircraft disintegrated in mid-air. This monumental achievement marked his 40th kill. In the immediate aftermath, Dick's P-38 shuddered violently and its left engine began to cough erratically. The oil pressure gauge plummeted alarmingly. He had indeed sustained hits during that final, intense exchange, though the full extent of the damage remained unclear in the heat of the moment. The engine temperature rapidly climbed into the red danger zone. With practiced calm, Dick swiftly shut down the failing engine and feathered its propeller, then initiated a turn towards his home base, still a daunting 200 miles distant. The Lightning, true to its robust design, handled predictably on a single engine, yet the fuel consumption increased dramatically under the strain. He rapidly performed mental calculations, remaining fuel, distance to base, current consumption rate. It was going to be an exceptionally close call. The remainder of his flight swiftly formed up around him, providing a vigilant escort as they limped precariously back across hostile enemy territory, a testament to their unwavering camaraderie. The journey continued across hostile enemy territory, a perilous traverse where every mile presented a potential threat. Suddenly, a grave mechanical failure struck. The port engine of the P-38 Lightning completely seized a mere 50 miles from its home base. The propeller, despite efforts to feather it, remained stubbornly locked, creating immense drag that severely hampered the aircraft's performance. To counteract this, the pilot, Dick, was forced to push the throttle of his sole remaining engine to its limit, desperately striving to maintain precious altitude. Fuel reserves, already dwindling, now became critically low. Recognizing the extreme danger, he pragmatically instructed his flight companions to proceed ahead, understanding the futility of risking everyone's arrival on exhaust fumes. Thus, Dick embarked on the final 30 miles of his journey in solitary suspense, his gaze fixed on the fuel gauge needle, which ominously hovered just above the empty mark. He promptly issued an emergency call to the tower at Port Moresby, declaring his dire situation. The air traffic controllers, understanding the urgency, immediately granted him clearance for a straight-in approach. The P-38 ultimately crossed the airfield boundary with its fuel warning light ablaze, a stark signal of its predicament. Dick executed a long touchdown, allowing the aircraft to roll out, and precisely as he guided it off the runway, the starboard engine sputtered and died, leaving him entirely without power. Upon inspection, the diligent ground crew uncovered the extent of the damage suffered during the harrowing flight. They meticulously counted 17 bullet holes, riddling the left wing and its engine nacelle, along with an additional 3 in the right wing, one of which had critically pierced the fuel tank. Awaiting Dick as he emerged from the cockpit at operations was none other than General George Kenney, a testament to the significance of the moment. Dick had just achieved an unprecedented 40 confirmed kills, establishing a new American record for aerial victories. Without delay, General Kenney personally affixed the Distinguished Service Cross to Dick's flight suit directly on the tarmac, an honor that, while profound, likely took a back seat to Dick's more immediate desires for a refreshing shower and a substantial meal. The eager press, ever present for a compelling narrative, swiftly crafted their headline, "Farm Boy from Wisconsin becomes America's ace of aces." Yet, amid the accolades and flashing cameras, Dick's primary concern remained practical. He simply wished to ascertain when maintenance could repair his P-38. For the unwavering reality was that another mission always loomed on the horizon. The remarkable record of 40 confirmed aerial victories stood as a monumental achievement, though Dick was destined to further augment this impressive tally. In the ensuing months, he continued to execute additional combat missions, even as his command increasingly sought to safeguard their most distinguished ace, preferring to mitigate the daily risks he faced in active engagement. Each subsequent kill he achieved only served to amplify his burgeoning legend, solidifying his place in military aviation history. However, it was the specific number of 40 attained on that fateful day of April 12, 1944, that indelibly etched his name into the annals of wartime heroism. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. What truly set Richard Bong apart from his contemporaries was not an inherent prodigious talent or a suite of supernatural reflexes. Indeed, many fellow pilots possessed superior eyesight, quicker reaction times, or even more overtly aggressive combat personalities. Instead, what fundamentally distinguished Dick was a profound sense of discipline, honed and refined to an exquisite art form. He approached the complex and dangerous arena of aerial combat with the same meticulous methodology he had applied to farm work, methodically, with unwavering patience, and with an acute attention to intricate details that often escaped the notice of others. While many hotshot pilots relied heavily on raw instinct and overt aggression in the heat of battle, Dick diligently studied ballistic tables and painstakingly calculated optimal firing ranges. Where others might expend ammunition in wide, hopeful sprays, Dick delivered controlled, precise bursts at the exact, opportune moment. His kill-per-sortie ratio was nothing short of extraordinary, not because he simply flew more missions than any other pilot, but because he ensured that every single mission counted, maximizing its effectiveness. The P-38 Lightning, an aircraft that initially grappled with a problematic reputation, unequivocally proved its formidable capabilities in Dick's skilled hands. Critics frequently argued that it lacked dogfighting prowess, struggled to turn effectively with nimble enemy fighters, and was, by design, overly complex for the harsh realities of combat conditions. Dick, however, systematically disproved these assertions by steadfastly refusing to engage the enemy on their terms. He masterfully exploited the Lightning's inherent strengths, its impressive speed, devastating firepower, and superior altitude performance, while judiciously sidestepping any tactical situations that would expose its inherent weaknesses. When other P-38 pilots voiced their complaints about the aircraft's limitations, Dick would pose a singular, incisive question. Are you trying to turn with zeros? If their answer was affirmative, he would patiently yet firmly elucidate why such an approach was strategically unsound. He would explain, the Lightning wasn't a zero. Stop trying to make it one. Use it as designed and it would bring you home. This pragmatic, effective philosophy rapidly permeated throughout the 5th Air Force. Consequently, P-38 units universally adopted boom and zoom tactics as their standard operational procedure, leading to a dramatic and significant improvement in their overall kill ratios. Dick's distinctive gunnery techniques swiftly evolved into mandatory study material for fighter pilots stationed across the entire Pacific Theater. The Army Air Force meticulously analyzed his gun camera footage, identifying clear and replicable patterns in his combat approach. It was observed that he consistently fired shorter bursts than the average pilot, specifically 1.3 seconds, compared to the far longer 2.8 to 8 seconds typical of other aviators. He also exercised remarkable restraint, waiting until his target was precisely within a range of 250 to 350 yards before initiating fire, thereby refusing to squander precious ammunition on low-probability, long-range shots. Furthermore, his targeting was incredibly precise. He aimed for specific, vulnerable components of enemy aircraft, such as engines, cockpits, or fuel tanks, rather than simply firing indiscriminately at the entire airframe. Most critically, his understanding of deflection shooting surpassed that of virtually anyone else in the theater. This exceptional ability to accurately lead a crossing target, a skill vital for aerial combat, originated from his formative years spent hunting ducks in the fields and skies of Wisconsin, a natural instinct he seamlessly translated into the complex, three-dimensional geometry of aerial engagements. While the Air Force endeavored to systematize his techniques into formal training curricula, the results were often mixed. While the mechanical aspects could be taught, the innate instinct derived from extensive experience proved far more elusive. His profound partnership with his dedicated crew chief, John De Silva, vividly illustrated another indispensable element of his enduring success: the crucial symbiosis between a pilot and the maintenance personnel supporting him. Dick extended a level of respect to his ground crew that was notably uncommon for the typical officer-enlisted dynamics prevalent in 1944. He consistently listened attentively when they articulated mechanical issues, and he placed considerable trust in their seasoned judgment regarding the operational limits and capabilities of his aircraft. In reciprocity, De Silva and the team ensured that his P-38 was maintained in a superior condition compared to virtually any other plane within the squadron. Consequently, while other aircraft frequently found themselves grounded for necessary maintenance, Dick's Lightning consistently remained mission-ready. This unwavering reliability directly translated into more combat hours for him, affording more opportunities for engagement and, ultimately, accumulating more confirmed kills. This demonstrated that success in aerial combat was not solely determined by events unfolding in the sky. It was fundamentally underpinned by meticulous logistics, diligent maintenance, mutual trust, and robust relationships forged on the ground. The definitive final tally of his aerial victories officially stood at 40 confirmed kills, though often accompanied by an asterisk. Some historians contend that Dick's actual total should be higher, perhaps reaching 48 if one were to include probable kills and damaged aircraft partially corroborated by gun camera footage. However, Dick himself never advocated for inflated numbers. He harbored a deep understanding that combat records necessitated stringent standards, and that any exaggerated claims would ultimately undermine credibility. The number 40 confirmed kills held paramount importance precisely because each was witnessed, meticulously documented, and independently verified. This unwavering discipline, his steadfast refusal to claim anything that could not be unequivocally proven, was a profound reflection of his inherent character. He could easily have emulated some other aces who claimed every damaged aircraft as a kill. Instead, he consciously held himself to an exceptionally higher standard of integrity and precision. Following the conclusion of the war, Dick was assigned to demanding test pilot duties, tasked with evaluating cutting-edge new jet aircraft at Burbank, California. On February 10, 1945, a personal milestone occurred as Dick married Marge Vattendahl, embarking on a new chapter of his life. They shared a precious period of almost 6 months together. Tragically, on August 6, 1945, the very same historic day the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Dick was conducting a routine acceptance flight of a P-80 shooting star when both fuel pumps unexpectedly failed during takeoff. The sleek jet subsequently crashed into an open field situated north of Burbank. Dick was only 24 years old. The farm boy, who had miraculously survived over 200 perilous combat missions and confronted hundreds of enemy aircraft in the skies, met his untimely end during a seemingly routine test flight brought down by a mechanical failure. The profound irony of his death was not lost on anyone who knew him. Dick himself had often remarked that mechanical problems, if not accorded due respect, could prove far more dangerous than any enemy fighter. Richard Bong's profound influence transcended the mere numerical tally of his aerial victories, establishing a legacy that resonated far beyond the record books. The innovative combat methodologies he meticulously developed and perfected rapidly ascended to the status of established doctrine within the realm of aerial warfare. Concepts such as sophisticated energy management, the potent efficacy of boom and zoom attack sequences, the critical importance of disciplined gunnery, and the seamless execution of wingman coordination were not just personal preferences. They fundamentally reshaped the very fabric of fighter combat for successive generations of aviators. Indeed, the P-38 Lightning, an aircraft initially viewed with a degree of skepticism by some, garnered widespread acceptance and commendation largely on the strength of Dick Bong's unparalleled ability to demonstrate its formidable capabilities when wielded by an exceptionally skilled pilot. His pioneering tactics provided a blueprint for aerial supremacy that would be adopted and adapted globally. Beyond his tactical prowess, the exemplary conduct Richard Bong consistently displayed forged the definitive blueprint for what an ideal fighter pilot should embody. He personified an unwavering professionalism devoid of ego, a profound competence unmarred by arrogance, and a lethal effectiveness tempered by an absence of cruelty, qualities that set him apart and made him a true leader. Even now, more than 70 years following his untimely demise, aspiring fighter pilots and seasoned veterans alike continue to meticulously dissect and internalize Richard Bong's masterful combat techniques, recognizing their timeless relevance in the complex arena of modern air combat. This unassuming farm boy, hailing from the serene landscapes of Wisconsin, harbored no ambition for widespread fame and actively eschewed the pursuit of personal glory. His sole profound desire was to execute his assigned duties with unparalleled excellence and precision. In the quiet fulfillment of this humble objective, he inadvertently ascended to become the ultimate benchmark against which all other aerial combatants are measured, a testament to character as much as skill. We ask you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. With an astonishing official tally of 40 enemy aircraft destroyed and the successful completion of 200 perilous missions, Richard Bong stood as the unequivocal testament to a singular enduring truth. He was the pilot who definitively proved that a judicious combination of unwavering discipline, strategic patience, and meticulous precision will invariably triumph over the impetuous fervor of raw, untamed aggression. His approach to aerial combat was a masterclass in calculated engagement, demonstrating that thoughtful execution and controlled aggression yield superior results. Such was the essence of Richard Bong's profound engagement in the war, a testament not just to his individual skill, but to a philosophy of combat, and that, ultimately, was the enduring nature of his extraordinary victory, forever etched into the annals of aviation history